Welcome back, everyone. Newsroom, Chella Smith here, your Middle East U.S. entertainment news here on YouTube. Airing on Fridays, I bring you the latest on reforms and economics based on reports put out by the Middle East news media outlets. I do this weekly review, and it's based off my interests. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. If you are joining me for the first time, welcome to Newsroom. If you're holding the Iraqi dinar, maybe this channel will be of interest for you. Let's get right into our news headlines. And what we've all been waiting for. Shafaq News reports the President of the Republic, Barham Saleh, calls yesterday for the necessity of launching a serious and urgent dialogue between the federal government and the Kurdistan Regional Government after a ruling issued by the Federal Supreme Court, the highest judicial authority in Iraq, that the oil and gas law of the regional government was unconstitutional. Saleh stressed the need to launch a serious and urgent dialogue between the federal government and the Kurdistan Regional Government to find realistic mechanisms that guaranteed what the Federal Supreme Court wanted to implement and in its manner that guarantees the constitutional entitlement of region and other Iraqis by harnessing imports to serve citizens away from corruption and bad faith administration. The President of the Republic called on the House of Representatives to act immediately to discuss the postponed oil and gas bill by enriching its text or submitting a new bill from the executive authority and approving it without complacency. He adds the political force hesitation for years. It's approving the oil and gas law contributes to creating problems and crisis and brought us to a critical moment where we face its consequences today. Saleh also stressed the necessity of forming the Federal Council, the missing legislative chambers in existing political systems, which Article 65 of the Constitution expressively and bindingly stipulates. The President of the Republic also called for the necessity of establishing a public authority concern with guaranteeing the rights of the region and governorates stipulated in Article 105 of the Constitution and supporting the general authority for monitoring the distribution of federal revenues. Saleh renewed his call to amend the text and Constitution, which reality has proven to be incapable of responsible for the deep crisis, in addition to supplementing and amending the text relating the work and formation of the executive and legislative authorities. On Tuesday, February 15th, the federal court issued a decision unconstitutional of the oil and gas law of the Kurdistan Regional Government with its obligation to hand over oil productions from oil fields in the region and other areas from which the Kurdistan Ministry of Natural Resources extracted oil and handed it over to the federal government representative by the Ministry of the Federal Oils and enabled it to use its constitutional powers regarding oil exploration, extraction, and exports. The president of the Kurdistan region, Narjavin Barzani, describes the decision as unconstitutional and was based on a law of a time of the former regime and stressed the regional government that such an unconstitutional decision cannot be accepted. The Kurdistan regional government considered the decision of the federal court on an oil and gas law in the region on Tuesday as unconstitutional, stressing that it cannot be accepted. The Kurdistan regional government began to sell its oil isolation from the federal government after stifling financial crisis as a result of the collapse of oil prices during ISIS invasion of the area in Iraq, in addition to disputes with Baghdad that promoted the latter to stop paying salaries of region's employees. Baghdad says its national oil company, SOMO, is the only one authorized to sell Iraqi crude oil, but each side claims the Constitution is on its side. Since the Iraqi oil and gas law remains imprisoned in the drafting stage due to difference, there was room for maneuver. The oil field is one of the most predominant outstanding issues between Baghdad and Erbil. Baghdad used to pay 453 billion Iraqi dinars per month, about 380 million, as salaries to employees of the Kurdistan region, but it stopped them after the region conducted the independence referendum on its part, and because of Baghdad said that the region was not committed to handing over its oil in accordance with the terms of the federal budget. After several rounds of political negotiations, the region was obligated, according to an agreement with the government in Baghdad, to hand over 250,000 crude barrels per day of crude oil produced from its fields to the state-owned company SOMO and hand over the revenues to the federal public treasury. So it should be interesting to see what happens in the future. Shafak News reported the presidency of the Iraqi parliament on Thursday summoning the Minister of Finance, Ali Alawi, and the Governor of the Central Bank, Mustafa Ghalib. The presidency said in a brief statement that the summonings of the financial officials came as a response to the directive of the leader of the Sadr's movement. Al-Sadr's has presented 6 proposals regarding the exchange rate of the dollar against the Iraqi dinar, including summonings the Minister of Finance, Ali Alawi, and the Governor of the Central Bank, Mustafa Ghalib, immediately to the council building. Al-Sadr's proposed strongly stopping currency smuggling, looking into some matters of some banks such as Middle East Al-Qaeda and Al-Asari, belonging to some people who control currency and other private banks, and dealing firmly with banks belonging to some parties controlling the country and the people. Al-Sadr's urges to organize the Iraqi currency market centrally and in a correct manner by enacting some laws that increase the value of the dinar exchange rate. Shafak News then reports the leader of the Sadr's movement, Muqtada al-Sadr's, demands Wednesday that Iraqis to be spared the interest-damaging gains from the rise in the dollar exchange rate in the country. Al-Sadr's wrote in his Twitter post, "The rise in the dollar exchange rate and the benefits and damages that it entails should not at all cause a rise in the price of the commodities in the markets, especially the important ones." Al-Sadr's stressed the need to work through the economic security to punish all merchants who seek to do so, and the like according to the law, especially among the people approaching the month of Ramadan. The Memo Middle East Monitor reported Iraq is a step closer to identifying the amount of money deposited into Swiss banks by the former regime and recovering it. The president of the Federal Commission of Integrity said yesterday the officials said that Iraq has succeeded to remove international banking secrecy clause off of the smuggled funds in Swiss banks in coordination with the Swiss Treasury. This came as a part of a campaign launched by the Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kazimi to recover the smuggled funds and to stop the country's wealth from being drained through various companies and people. Shafak News reported oil prices rose by about 3% on Wednesday to compensate for the most of losses of the previous day, at a time when investors weigh conflicting statements about the possibilities of some Russian forces withdrawal from across Ukraine. The threatening situation of Russia has dominated the oil markets over the past few weeks, with fears that it will disrupt energy supplies from the main producer. The markets also received support from weekly data that showed that the fuel demanded in the United States stabilized at a record level, while U.S. crude stocks fell to their lowest level since September 2018. Al-Frat News reports Al Rafadayan Bank called on retirees to replace their electronic card from a key card to a MasterCard. Al Rafadayan stressed in a statement the necessities of replacing the card issued by the bank to ensure the retirees to continue to receive their salaries. He noted that the card is renewed via the electronic link and to receive it from the nearest Rafadayan Bank branch. Shafak News reports Al Rashid Bank announced Wednesday directing its deposit branches to promote transaction for credit activity and for all the sectors. The bank's media office said in a statement that its branches were directed to directly promote transactions for credit activity and for all the sectors. The bank has previously suspended the work of granting credit for the purpose of annual applications and approval of the credit plan for the year 2022. There was a lot of banking updates this week. Magazine News reports the central bank on Wednesday announced the significant strides have been made to increasingly electronic payment tools and transforming the Iraqi society into a digital one and gradually leaving cash handling, while the deputy executive director of the Association of the Iraqi Private Banks indicated the association's readiness for the success of the central bank's strategy to enhance the concept of financial inclusion. It's organized an Iraqi-Jordanian banking forum in Baghdad, noting that the forum was held in the presence of the deputy governor of the central bank, Ammar Hamad, and the Jordanian minister of digital economy, and a number of Iraqis and Jordanian banks and payment companies. Khalaf said that the Iraqi banking sector is in the growth stage and it can cooperate with the Jordanian electronic payment companies, which will positively reflect on the country's economy. Shafak News reports the deputy speaker of the Iraqi parliament, Shahwan Abdul Ahmed, arrived Wednesday in New York in the United States of America on an official visit at the invitation of the International European Union and the United Nations General Assembly. Abdul has received an invitation from Durrati Pacheco, president of the Interparliamentary Union, and Abdul Shahed, president of the United Nations General Assembly, for the 76th session, which was addressed to the presidency of the Iraqi Council of Representatives with the aim of participating in the parliamentary hearing session entitled Building Political Support and Comprehensive Response to Sustainable Recovery, which will be held at the United Nations headquarters on February 17th and 18th. Upon his arrival, the vice president stated that the parliamentary hearing will be a joint initiative of the Parliamentary Union and the Office of the President of the General Assembly, with the aim of strengthening the global dialogue of the United Nations and the capital of countries around the world and sustainable development and precautionary measures in the face of the challenges of the corona pandemic and its variables. He added that the hearing will provide government and parliament with critical visions and perspectives to build economies that work for everyone and sustainable environments for the future generations, as well as discussing legislative and legal mechanisms to enhance the role of women in achieving justice and equality. And on the other hand, Abdullah explained that the level of attendance will be from the heads of parliament and their deputies, and indicated their participating delegations will apply to preventative measures and strict restrictions on safety rules and health guidelines due to COVID-19. Shafak News then reports the U.S. ambassador to Baghdad, Matthew Tweller, said Wednesday that his country encourages the Kyrgyzstan regional government and the federal government to reach an understanding and coordination between them to resolve the differences and outstanding issues between Erbil and Baghdad. Earlier, the Kyrgyz leader Mauzer Barzani received at the Saleh Al-Din resort the U.S. ambassador, according to the statement issued by Barzani's headquarters. The statement said that during the meeting, which was attended by Robert Palladino, the U.S. Consul General in Erbil, the situation in Iraq, the latest development, the equation in political process in Iraq, and the constitutional steps after the first session of the Iraqi Council of the Representatives were discussed. The statement added that the meeting stressed the need for coordination and cooperation between the political forces and the components of Iraq. In another aspect of the meeting, the American ambassador said that his country cares carefully about the Iraqi political changes and events and encourages all parties, the Kyrgyzstan region, and the federal government to reach an understanding and coordination to address the problems. The ambassador also stressed that the United States is committed to security, stability, and development of the Iraq's and Kyrgyzstan region, according to the statement. And last but not least, the federal court rejected Houser Zembari, candidate of the Kyrgyzstan Democratic Party for the position of President of the Republic of Iraq, and replaced him, according to Al-Farat News, with Fadel Marini for the post of President of the Republic. And when the federal courts decide if he will be the sitting president, I will go into more details due to each day we get a new candidate. That was a lot of information to go over. Now let's take a look at last week's comments and newsroom. Myron says, I just took the time to watch one of your programs. You mentioned the white papers. Any idea as to the rate compared to the USD? Oh, Malakoff, Texas, United States of America. Myron, that's a great question. I'm only speculating with my answer, but I believe it'll be between 5 cents and maybe $11.90 because we've seen that in the past. We hear people speaking if it's a rushed revaluation or a rushed reinstitution, but only the new majority government will be able to give us that information, and we'll have to continue to look onto the CBI. And thank you for that comment. And that's all for this week's Newsroom Weekly Review, your Middle East U.S. entertainment news on reforms and economics. I try to bring you all the latest Dinar news without having to keep up with all the different outlets. I'm Chella Smith, Newsroom here on YouTube, but don't forget to subscribe, and if you like my content, give me a thumbs up. I will see you next Friday for your next Newsroom update. Shout out to Currency 365 for his continued support. If you want to learn about stocks or cryptos, you can join him and his crew for the most recent updates. You can find him on YouTube or Patreon. Please don't forget about the Viewers Appreciation event here on YouTube. I'd like to hear your thoughts this week about the oil and gas laws. This will get you an entry this week into the drawing. The last filming Friday in February, which I think is next week, I will draw 2 names at the end of my show. 2 winners will be selected, and I will have those winners contact me by email only, and I will see that you receive your Viewers Appreciation gift from Newsroom. Thank you everyone again for joining me this week. Take care. Make sure you join us Fridays, 4 p.m. with Newsroom Updates with Chella Smith Entertainment News.